My name is Max Stein, and I love video games.
I'm the Megabuck. I really love video games.
I'm Raph, and I love video games.
And welcome to the Game Treasure Podcast, where we talk treasured games of yesterday, today, and tomorrow. This week, today marks the anniversary, according to Nintendo's website. I don't know who knows better. We've actually talked about this before. It seems like nobody kept that good a track of some of this stuff. But according to Nintendo's official website, today is the anniversary of Final Fantasy I coming to the NES.
Holy
guacamole.
Yeah.
But what better excuse also to just have the Megabuck just go off about where he's at in Dawntrail, because I know he's just I'd be seeing him play on Steam. So we're gonna give him a little floor to explain to us how it's going. Raph, were you able to play it all just as a sneak preview? Were you able to log in?
Of 14?
Yes.
Yeah. I was able to get a few hours in.
All right.
Yeah, I got some
You
time
didn't even
in.
ask me what server I'm on, so you could join me on the server.
I know.
So, man, I ran into the weirdest problems.
No, okay, we'll talk about it. Okay, so
I'll get into it with this game. I ran into
MMO problems.
Man, I ran into
before
some
we
issues
get
trying to
into
level up.
all of that, per tradition here at the Game Treasure Podcast, the Megabuck and RetroGameTreasure.com are going to take us back in time with today's Retro Zone. Buck, please hit me.
Back in time. Gentlemen, would you kindly join me in Rapture?
Oh, wow.
Bioshock.
Oh, that's a good one.
Ken Levine's masterpiece for whatever generation this was,
The Xbox 360, does that say?
This was the
my.
360. Yeah.
Yeah.
This. Holy smokes!
Yeah.
I think at the time Ken Levine had been quiet for a little bit, and then it was like, I've got a new series that I'm working on. It's little what if dystopian Walt Disney went crazy and made a place for us all to live under the sea.
And his first game, what's that? System Shock?
Shock, yeah.
Right. Okay.
Right.
Oh yeah. Yeah, Bioshock, I never played the first one except for a couple hours. It was too scary for me when it came out. I was still I guess I was kind of I should have been able to play it, but it's a scary ass fucking game.
This game is a lesson in how to immerse your players. Play this game with the lights off, and even if it doesn't scare you, it sucks you into Rapture.
I felt like I was there, just like surviving, man. This game is amazing.
Yeah, if you guys never played this,
explain it.
For as much as it would fit into like that first-person shooter category, because that is how the game mechanics are played. It's exploring this underwater city, cities in a bubble, underwater, so to speak, but full of these deranged occupants as you pump yourself full of genetically altering
goo that you find
magical energy. I mean, you end up being able to do electricity and control, beings and all kinds of really cool things that adds to the motif, as it were, of like the 30s era kind of style, like that's locked in Rapture.
Yeah, it reminds me of like
it's a
Fallout-esque thing, you know what I mean? Where it's like Utopia gone wrong.
Yeah,
but so much scarier than Fallout. There's these big, what are they? The
big daddies,
and
the little sister.
The
hulking
noise
monstrosities with Shrek-like proportions that chase you around with drill arms, and they're horrifying. And they're always accompanied by tiny little girls with long black hair that are like basically the gas mask kid from that Doctor Who episode. Like,
are you my mummy?
Are you my mummy?
Yeah.
Doctor Who was really good.
It's funny because Bioshock, I saw a thread on Reddit the other day, and it raised the question, and I was like, you know what? It kind of is. Bioshock is a Metroidvania.
Yeah, I would. You know what? I would put it
you
more.
Backtrack a lot.
You backtrack a lot, and it is basically equipment gated. You kind of have to you have to kind of get stuff to get to certain, open up new areas and then come back and check those areas out again. I think it's kind of a Metroidvania.
I would definitely put this closer to Metroid Prime than any FPS.
Right.
Yeah, I agree.
That's an excellent game to compare it to that I've never heard the comparison, but that makes sense.
Yeah, me
Because the
either, but it
gunplay
does.
in that game, again, did not get very far. Do you get crazy guns or no? They're pretty simple guns.
Yeah, you get like no,
Yeah.
not crazy guns. You get Tommy guns and other things. Where it gets crazy is your powers. You know,
Powers,
you're
right,
you're
right.
you're shooting a
Combined.
Tommy gun and you're
You
force
have like
lightning
a
on something.
hand if you never played the game. You have like your left hand has like something that happens to it, and it has powers that come out of it or whatever.
Yeah.
So if your guy's
basically
right-handed, you
have
shoot the gun with the
weapons
right hand. You
and
got the
magic.
powers in the left hand.
Right. Out of vending machines.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. It
I
has a
think
lot of cool, fun, atmospheric storytelling in that regard, like Fallout as well, where
you
you'll
run
come
into
across an area
yeah.
where you're just like, "What the fuck is this?" Like
People just doing stuff where you find like
Oh,
a
yeah.
scene where like people died here, or like two people are arguing or whatever. And it's
right. I
pretty
was gonna
wild,
say
yeah.
you'll find guys you got to kill, and they'll be like screaming at a wall that has a bunch of shit written on it in blood
Yeah.
or something. And it's
So you
just like,
did play it.
Hello? That's like every moment of the game is like that. Like it's just like, oh my god, it's so scary.
For me, this game is
Constantly
walking-
just scary the whole
Walking
time.
through waterlogged hallways with
Yeah.
lights coming from around the corner, casting a shadow of two people arguing or fighting, and that's like the whole game for me.
It is
Yeah.
very
You know, like,
artistic
just-
in that respect. Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful
Yeah.
game. I love it.
Yeah, we have Universal Studios Halloween Horror Nights here where we live. This whole game is like a giant Halloween Horror Nights. Like at least
Maze,
Resident
yeah.
Evil has the happy rooms where there's nothing like is allowed to get you.
Yeah, there's no real
Normally.
happy rooms in this.
It's like
yeah.
no, you're just constantly getting berated.
Yeah.
Man, yeah, if you have an Xbox 360, why not have this in your fucking collection?
Yeah,
That's
it can-
an excellent one to pull out of the old storage there, out of the old inventory.
Yeah, it was on all the consoles across that generation, has been released and re-released on some of the newer ones as well too. So obviously it falls into the FPS genre. It is an M for mature game, but most importantly, there's subgenres we let you select, like fantasy and mecha and military, and sci-fi is one of those. And sci-fi is the one you would definitely have to select to get Bioshock.
Nice.
Yeah.
I would fucking love that. Get that in my box. That
Great
sounds
game.
fantastic. Go to www.retrogametreasure.com. Sign up today. If you got an Xbox 360, you might just get yourself. Well, I guess if you got anything, you might just get yourself a copy of Bioshock if you got them preferences
Yeah.
set just right.
Hell yeah.
Awesome. Awesome Retro Zone. Well, let's take a quick break as we always do before we get into our main subject for the day, Final Fantasy.
I am Andrew Ryan, and I'm here to ask you a question. Is a man not entitled to the sweat of his brow? No.
Okay, we're back. We're back and we're ready to talk about our main subject for today. Again, it's the anniversary of the granddaddy, the OG of RPGs, Final Fantasy coming to America. Final Fantasy, if you've watched, man, because I was trying to think, how many have we talked about already in our 30 episodes? I think we've talked
They're important.
about 9 and 7 and 6 and 4.
It's the game heard around the world, man. Like the one dropped, and then it's so many after that. You know?
Yeah, it's important to
phenomenon.
a lot of people, but obviously RPGs are pretty important to us if you've watched the show, and Final Fantasy RPGs are a lot of those RPGs.
I learned my Roman numerals.
Yeah, yeah, right. So, as per usual, we turn to our in-game historian, the Megabuck, for some tidbits of fun information and history on this marvelous, fantastic, incredible, one-of-a-kind franchise.
Look at this beautiful kid.
Damn.
Wow.
Explain what you're holding up.
This is a copy of Final Fantasy I for the Nintendo Entertainment System.
It's glossy as fuck.
I know.
I have it in a protected
He
box.
has it in a protective box,
have it
and
in a
it's
protected
mint
box, so
AF looking.
it's-
Like
It's pretty good.
It's
got-
primo.
It has the 84-page Explorer's Handbook and Game World and Dungeon maps plus full-color monster chart inside.
so D&D. I don't know.
Dude,
Is
that
that is the Japanese cover
gorgeous.
different?
No, the Japanese cover is actually just is red, I believe, with some of the heroes on it. We actually got a
Interesting.
pretty cool cover in this
Yeah,
case.
that whoops ass.
Yeah.
And it was one of the first strategy guides that they put out with Nintendo Power as well, which was the strategy guide to the original Final Fantasy. God knows, did we need it back then. If you guys have never heard the story of Final Fantasy, Hironobu Sakaguchi, who worked for Square back in the day, he wanted to make a bigger adventure game. If you've ever played Rad Racer, that was the first Square game for the NES. So you can see where this would be a bit of a jump from a racing game like Rad Racer that's not very complex. The rumor had originally gone that Square was going bankrupt and it was called Final Fantasy because if it wasn't a success, they were going to go out of business.
That's what I heard as well.
I had heard that one for a long time. About 10 years ago, Sakaguchi actually set the record straight on this. He wanted to, like I said, branch out into games, bigger games. And he really liked the name Fighting Fantasy. Turns out Fighting Fantasy the name was already taken by, get this, a fantasy RPG tabletop book, a competitor to Dungeons and Dragons, if you will, called Fighting Fantasy by none other than Ian Livingstone and Steve Jackson.
Whoa! So that's where the Munchkin guy comes in.
Like the GURPS guy, right?
If you're into board games, then you know who these guys are, especially Steve Jackson.
Games,
and Ian Livingstone went on to do. I mean, if you ever played Ian Livingstone's Death Trap Dungeon for the PS1, he went on to do a lot of fantasy stuff as well too. And the guys that like tabletop fantasy probably know a lot more than me with that stuff because I was more of a D&D guy. So the name was already taken. The thing was, though, he really just wanted something with the initials FF because it sounds good in Japanese. The ifu. Don't know why he thought that alliteration was cool, but he really did.
It sounds cool.
And they had already decided, and then they said, well, what about the word final? Because in Japanese, people know that American word. Because here's the thing, right? Final Fantasy isn't called the translate. Final would be saigo no, like the end of something. And then fantasy, which doesn't have really a Japanese word for that directly. So it would have been called Saigo no Fantaji if its name was that in Japanese. It's not. In Japan, it's called Fainoru Fantaji. It's just a Romaji, the Romanized version.
Right.
Version with Final Fantasy. So he said, okay, great. That sounds good. And it has the FF, which I really like. Although he did go on to say, but if it failed, I probably would have quit the business and gone back to college to do something different than make video games.
Wild.
Wow. So, what do you think about Final Fantasy? And then just like I see him at his desk, and then glasses slowly fall down, and then just like in the joint. Yes, it sounds cool. Yeah.
This game was huge when it came out too. Like as far as like being, it's sort of innovative. Like not a lot of like RPGs had this sort of like depth and size, right?
That's from what I understand. We had a copy, not that copy because we didn't have the box, but we had for the NES a copy. I remember playing it. Probably the first 30 minutes of it over and over and over and over again.
Right.
But from what I understand from just doing my research, it was lauded. This was 1990 when this hit the NES, 34 years ago. By the standards of the RPGs of the day, this was incredibly deep and sophisticated. It got lauded for the job system being dynamic. More dynamic than like something like Gauntlet, I guess, would be its competition at the time. And then also, it's funny that you mentioned Rad Racer, Buck, because one of the things that I found a lot of people giving Final Fantasy praise for at the time of its release was the fact that you get vehicles in the overworlds.
The chocobos and the airships.
You get the raft, you get the boat, you get
that's right. In one, right?
In number one, you get a raft and a boat and I think you get an airship as well. But point being that at the time you're usually just walking around.
Yeah. And fast travel to an extent was not a thing, right?
Fast travel is definitely not a thing. But also,
I'd call a vehicle fast travel, old school.
Sure. I mean, in this instance you would. And it's funny that they sort of, this game, I guess, pioneered that because to this day, open world games can live or die by the way like Monster Hunter Rise, perfect example of where they put a dog in it and it makes the game just like, oh my god, Elden Ring, they put a horse in it that makes the game just so much easier to traverse. Tears of the Kingdom, they're like, just make your own cars, and you're like, okay, yeah.
World traversal is everything in a game that size, honestly, because
precisely.
Well, it wasn't
most
in
of your time
RPGs
traveling,
before
you know?
that.
Yeah.
The few amount of RPGs that we had before that was not a thing. And when you go to like PC and other computers before that had lots of point and click, and ones like that had like Shadowgate that had lots of like first person dungeon crawling, it was just about getting from one end to the other and trying to find the loot, a la like a Dungeons and Dragons campaign, right? Like Max said, that's a really good point to the way that they worked on it. There were a lot of revolutionary things in this game that we still haven't gotten in enough RPGs yet, like changing classes partway through the game when the thief turns into a ninja, and some of that things as well. Most notably, because the game that I can think of in most recent memory that does this, Unicorn Overlord does that.
Right.
Where partway through the game, a bunch
recent.
of your characters can be upgraded to a better version of that same class, which is a total nod to the series here.
Kind of like Tactics too, or like any one of the Final Fantasies that had a job system like that.
Yeah. So what was funny that happened here to us in the States was Final Fantasy 1 came out in Japan in 1987, right? Mm-hmm. So like you said, it was a big hit. So in 1988, Final Fantasy 2 came out, and in 1989-ish, Final Fantasy 3 came out in Japan. Damn. We didn't get 2 and 3 here in the States. So Final Fantasy 4 comes out in Japan in like 90-ish, and we get Final Fantasy 1 in the States in 1990.
Right.
So the first 3 games were already out by the time they bring it over here. And then Final Fantasy 4, therefore R2 comes out in 91, a year later. So to like us, it was like, whoa,
what a jump!
Holy
like,
shit! Yeah. What a year!
What a jump in quality. So I'm curious about something I've wondered, and I haven't been able to really find an answer online. They skipped, Final Fantasies 2 and 3 here in the US.
And 5.
Right, and 5, yes. Yeah, they went straight to, 4 being 2, and then,
3 being 6.
But then they went to 7. Like,
yes.
There was no change in the naming convention, like, from coming from Japan to here. And I wonder why. Like, was that a thing even back then? I don't remember,
the reason's got to be because by then they were popular enough that they had to just sync it up.
Yeah.
Because we didn't get 2 and 3. And therefore became R2, and then we didn't get 5 because whatever reason they didn't. When they were, remember, we've had our discussions about like they decided to localize certain things. So they gave us Final Fantasy Mystic Quest,
the Game Boy, yeah.
But no, Mystic Quest, the SNES one.
I'm sorry. Sorry.
2-player. It's not a bad game, but it's not a real Final Fantasy game. And then they skipped 5, and then they released 6. That's the one with Terra and Locke and Setzer and all them, but it comes to us as 3 because that's only the 3rd Final Fantasy we've gotten.
Right.
And so again, Raph, so the next one they released was 7 for the PS1, and 6 sold enough, I think, that they went, okay, let's just stop trying to make. By then they caught up to itself, right? Because they'd already righted the ship by making 6-3 and I don't know, they just decided forget it. Let's just.
This is popular here. It's popular in the U.S. already, so we might as well just
let's stop fighting it.
Up. Yeah,
we're probably not going to decide to not bring another one over, so let's just go ahead and sync.
Probably like the Yakuza thing with Yakuza and Like a Dragon, how like it got popular enough in the States, and they were like, we don't want to call it Yakuza.
In a way.
Also, don't name your game series after a mafia-style organization that's not supposed to exist.
Just name it a bunch of mishmash garbage sounds for your language.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Otherwise, Final Fantasy X would be Final Fantasy VII, and Final Fantasy XIV would be Final Fantasy XI-ish.
Another thing Final Fantasy did to RPGs that pretty much stuck was being able to see your party while you're battling. Everybody knows Dragon Quest games, aka Dragon Warrior, here in the States, is a first-person game because at that point, adventure games, like basically every game that was like Dungeons and Dragons, took place from a first-person perspective because you're supposed to be yourself.
Right.
So these games would have moments where you're in an overworld, so it's like, that's me, I'm this guy. But then it would switch to first-person because people designing the games were like, I don't know, like, you're him, right? Yeah. So then Final Fantasy says, like, oh no, what if, like, you enjoy these characters that you get to make? What if you get to actually look at them while they fight? And it's like, oh shit. And then everybody just, there's no first-person combat in any turn-based RPGs anymore. Like
Yeah.
even the Dragon Quest games switched over to
Which is
those
funny
like
'cause-
cinematic 7 style angles and whatnot.
Which is funny because the Phantasy Star series kept that tradition up. That's
Did
how
they?
the
Are you
Phantasy
sure?
Star series
Really?
went from the first person combat thing to at least for whenever they stopped on the Genesis, so around like number 4. I think.
Okay, yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah.
Wow.
But yeah, so Final Fantasy, it was a big game changer in RPGs. We already mentioned all the traverse, all these things. The storyline we mentioned on the top is probably what I would say Final Fantasy's biggest draw is to its fans, all the way up to what is now technically the most recent Final Fantasy thing to come out, which is Final Fantasy 14 Dawntrail.
Scions, let's go, baby.
The newest expansion for the very critically acclaimed MMORPG from Squaresoft. It's money printing machine. They just keep on expanding and riding that gravy train.
God bless Daddy Yoshi P.
I've played A Realm Reborn for however long it took me to get to level 50 and get your artifact armor or whatever it's called in this game.
Get a bard, right?
Raph got to play a little bit. Buck has
just a few
obviously
hours,
played
yeah.
a fuckload and now has played. How many hours would you say you are in Dawntrail? Do you know?
Well, I just before the taping of this, I hit cap level, which is level 100. That's the new level cap.
Congratulations.
Okay.
Thank you. There's 6 new areas in this expansion. I am in area 5. So don't know how
Okay.
much more story it is. This one took a big turn in the second half, so we'll see. It could be 10 more hours of story. It could be double that. I don't really know.
You know what? Why don't you just, while you're on the topic, why don't you go ahead and explain to us what the story of Dawntrail covers, how Final Fantasy 14 is doing, what's good with it. It's
Yeah.
What is
obviously
happening
like
in the
basically
world right
brand new.
now?
It's been
Yeah.
out for how many weeks? 2?
2 weeks-ish, 3 weeks,
Something
I think,
like
as
that,
of this
and,
recording. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
In the immortal words of Brentalfloss, in Final Fantasy, we must save the crystals or the orb or the moons, whatever, because that's
Gotta save
every
something.
Final Fantasy game,
The
right?
MacGuffin, right? Yeah.
Exactly, that's their MacGuffins, right? So if you played any 14 at all, or if you know anything about Final Fantasy 14, and Venny has talked about it at length in our previous episodes too, about the world blowing up because they needed an excuse to redo the game because it sucked beans after the
that's
first
right,
year
yes.
or so. They have spent this is the 5th expansion, maybe. Yeah, Heaven's Word, Stormblood, Shadowbreak. Yeah, this is the 5th expansion. And the previous 4 expansions were continuing upon one giant 10-year story arc. Like, God help you if you came in somewhere between Shadowbringers and Endwalker, because you only had about 200 or 300 hours worth of story to go through if you wanted to absorb everything that had gone on.
It's like a fucking Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Yeah, right.
It really is. It's like watching a ton of Marvel movies. And also, if you didn't see most of them, you'll be lost at points, right? So at the end of the last expansion, you literally like go to the frickin' moon and fight the giant big bad that's been looming over everything since the meteor went down. And spoilers, you kill him and you end the story arc. You win. You saved the world and then some.
The realm is reborn. You did it.
The realm is saved. The realm was reborn, and now the realm is saved.
Nice.
And so when they're doing this expansion, it was like, so what's this going to be about? Like, we already did everything. And what
now
they
we
chose
can do
to
anything.
Yeah, well, you've stayed mainly contained to one very large continent with 2 big factions warring with each other. And so they've went, well, why don't we go across that ocean? And so they introduce a character before this expansion came out named Wuk Lamat. I'll get to that in a minute. Who is basically like the fighting princess of this other country called Tural. And she says, I'm in a battle, the right of succession to become the next king/queen, whatever. And I want you to come and fight with me. It's basically the premise to Black Panther. Like, this whole thing is like the premise to Black Panther.
Literally
right?
a Marvel movie now.
Yes.
Yeah,
who's gonna succeed? Yoshi P is one thing, and that is, I like something. I'm going to amalgamate it into this cool thing that you're gonna like me
He
doing,
likes
right?
that money. That's what he fucking
Yeah.
likes. He's like,
And so the coolest thing about this game is about this expansion is it is a whole new adventure. The only real thing you got to know is these kids right here, YouTube kids. These are the Scions of the Seventh Dawn.
Okay.
These are most of your main compatriots. Your character is the Warrior of Light, and everybody else on this shirt is a compatriot of yours in this fraternity called the Scions of the Seventh Dawn. And basically, as Alphino Levier, one of the siblings that runs it, says, the Scions labor for Eorzea, that's the realm's salvation. Whenever the realm is threatened, be it primal, Ascian, or Garlean, we take up arms in her defense. And so they're the guys that investigate the stuff that's too scary or too powerful or too mysterious for someone else to check out. So they have the really smart scholars, and they have the people who are very well connected, and they have people like the Warrior of Light, who's a total badass and can kill something if they need a big bad killed. And so your group is gonna go across the sea and see, explore the new world. So the coolest thing about this expansion is there's no, oh no, the world is in peril and the moon's gonna explode. Oh no, the help, we have to save the princess. It literally just feels like you're on an adventure.
Just exploring.
It just feels like a good old RPG where you're exploring through. It's a lot of South American kind of inspired. It's a lot of Mayan, Incan style, lots of jungles and temples and stuff like that. It's a game that we've been playing for a decade. And it's like, how freaking long has it been since I just got to do a mountain dungeon for the sake of doing a mountain dungeon, not because I have to stop the big bad that's
right. Something that wasn't tied to this one main plot.
Right.
Yeah, it's not just saving the world. It's this great new adventure, right?
Yeah.
So on top of that, the game got the game is now built on a new engine. It got its first graphical update in a decade. Have you guys seen it at all?
I haven't.
Tell you what,
I mean, I saw the trailers and I was like, holy shit, if it looks like this, it's going to be crazy.
And it does. There was a character
Really?
Named Zero in the previous expansion that you could tell she had more facial expression than any other character. And you could tell that she was a test model for things they were trying as they were going to the new engine, because now the facial expressions and like the realism of eyeballs and things that you don't think should matter. But again, remember, this is an MMO. You're like, holy crap,
right.
you can tell when a person is being conniving. When someone cries, you're like, holy shit, they're actually crying, right?
Yeah.
And so so everything in the new expansion is prettier. Plus they up-resed all of the old textures, especially for armor and everything else. So you can't count the pixels on your armor anymore. Which is super cool. But now you're like, I had this really cool glowing artifact, this and that, and you get some like new thing that makes you look like a Mad Max reject, and you're like, I want to wear that because this is way prettier. It's got higher resolution and all that good stuff.
The plot is so fucking anime.
Yeah.
Just like the layout of your shirt, and just like, these are the 7 guys and they're part of your crew, and there's this thing, and there's just like all of them look so, all the designs of all the characters in this game. We can get into our experiences, I guess, with it.
Such a Final Fantasy plot. Just like, we have to go to the moon and kill God. Like,
right. I mean, that's what the last 10 years has been. So this is a real breath of fresh air now.
But all the style of this game, World of Warcraft, never bid on the style. For me, too chunky, too DreamWorksy. I don't know. I'm trying to think of other famous MMOs that tried to, like, EverQuest.
EverQuest,
just
City of Heroes or something like that. None of these games
City of Heroes, I guess, kind of the sort of material, but I don't know. It's all whatever. But this game, I did put, like I said, I don't know, probably at least 30 hours into to get to level 50 or something like this, maybe more. It looks so primo. At least it did before. So, goddamn, I bet now.
More beautiful now.
I can only imagine. Just like the design does so much heavy lifting that the graphics didn't have to be very good. So now if the people look better and everything is still like Yoshi P just fucking living in this Final Fantasy, not to backtrack, but what a singular vision of a world they've created with this franchise, starting with number 1, obviously, like we said, number 1 catches fire and then it spawns the whole thing. But it's not very Lord of the Rings fantasy. It's not too Dungeons and Dragons. Like, it's this very interesting.
Unique.
we've talked about it before, like these Japanese takes on Western things, like Dark Souls is like Japanese takes on Western things. Metal Gear Solid is a Japanese take on a Western thing. But just Final Fantasy has its own vibe. You know what I mean?
They've gone through different eras, right? They've done like the high fantasy, and then they did like the steampunky kind of with 6, and then they did the high tech with 7, and then they reined it back in for 9 and 10.
Regardless, but it always has like, it's like things like it's whimsical, right? Obviously, it has its own cast of monsters where maybe the bomb is a little bit like a beholder, you know what I mean? Or like, there might be some overlap there with Dungeons and Dragons, like goblins. Like, I don't know how to avoid goblins being in Lord of the Rings and Dungeons and Dragons. And
I mean, it's a fantasy thing. It's a strong fantasy element that's there.
Final Fantasy's approach to all these things has always just been so uniquely Japanese, dare I say.
I think a large part of it is that Square Enix has such a strong like design document. Like whoever designed these initial characters, they locked it down on the first go around, basically. Right, yeah, and like that design document is adhered
Yoshitaka
to, like,
Amano was also the very first art director of the whole thing.
He did the art direction.
If you've ever seen his pencil drawings, it's like he draws like the guy from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. I can't remember that manga creator, but they basically, it seems like they studied a bunch of like design, like French design magazines, like for like women's clothing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like he still does the freaking logos for all the 14 expansions.
It's so
Yoshitaka Amano.
Fabulous. Like all of his characters have always since day one been so like wispy and different than just like I'm Conan the Barbarian, I'm a big you know what I mean, like or just I don't know, most high fantasy is like that, you know what I mean, like, even Lord of the Rings will sometimes succumb to just like the tropes of it all.
Everybody wants to be Frazetta, but he's got like this nouveau French sort of like art style that's very flowy, you know?
Right, organic. Exactly. Lots of like watercolors to inspire the sprites, you know? And so it's just like, and then all the way to Final Fantasy XIV to get us back on track. The artifact armor for all of just the level 50 armor for all the classes is just like
all the armor now.
This is so Final Fantasy. What do you mean? It's just so anime. It's like the most anime, like
the most anime high fantasy you've ever seen.
Yeah.
There's 2 new classes in the new expansion, and one of them is Pictomancer. And when you go to pick up the job, they explain to you that the original Pictomancer that was the master that created it, Realm. Like they literally just jump into, Realm created Pictomancy. What do you want to fight about it? And they talk about her, and they even make a Realm reborn joke when you're gonna do it. So, but it's fun. It's like a black mage, but it's uses pictures. You draw Moogles and starry nightscapes, and they do all kinds of different buffs and damage and stuff. It's fun.
So I'm interested in Raf's interpretation of this game. This game is, if you go to Steam, you can download a demo version, quote unquote, of this game for free. So there are certain stipulations, like your account in this demo version of the game can't do certain things, like invite people to quests. You can only be invited. You can't participate in like the global like quest things, I think, or something like this.
There's only
you can't join like guilds and such.
Some bullshit. The point being,
it's free, and they're trying to limit people from making like gold farming accounts and crap.
The point being, if you're watching this and you've never played Final Fantasy XIV. This is 3 people telling you, if you have Steam, your computer can run it. Try it out. Raft got to try it this week. So I wanted to hear the opinion of someone who maybe got to only play like a handful of hours, what they felt about it.
Yeah, I didn't get to play a whole lot. Honestly, I'm not a big MMO guy. I've tried numerous ones. Probably DC Universe Online, I want to say, is the only one that I spent a lot of time in. And it's mostly because I really like Green Lantern. But
nice.
But I jumped into this kind of not expecting a whole lot. But you know what? Honestly, it's not my typical fare in games, but this is not the typical MMO.
No, it's not.
I like the first moment that really shocked me, and I was like, whoa, dude, is like just walking, finally getting everything set up, because like most MMOs, a lot of the early in-game stuff is very you got to run back and forth. It's tedious. You're running from one room to the next, basically back and forth.
Learning curve oriented too.
Right. And then you finally get out, and I walked out into like this big square, and it was full of fucking people, and all of these people were players, and it felt like I was in a real place. And I was like, oh shit, okay, I'm in it. Like this is Final Fantasy Online right now. Holy crap, man. Yeah. It's cool as hell. Like,
he must have been
the dude that played by shit, dude.
Oh damn, dude.
Final
Yeah,
Fantasy
this is like
Online, dude.
Mind you, this is like after like a couple of hours of trying to get the damn thing to work on my computer, because like I will say that Final Fantasy 14's like interface to actually get into it is a little archaic, but hey, you know, it's not
it's
exactly
an MMO. You were trying. They only. Correct me if I'm wrong, Buck. You would know more than this. But do they cycle basically which servers are available to make characters for?
That kind of is what it looked like.
They really have to balance the load. You're talking a game that is the most popular MMO and has like 30 million players. They just added new servers again. They added a new data center to Australia late last year. And they just added new servers before that. Well, they have their own now. Like name them MMO that Australia has their own data center for. You know what I mean?
Right,
like, wow. And so they just added new servers. So they try to rotate them unless you there's like a whole friend invite thing where you can try to get people, and as long as you're not on an overpopulated server. But the thing is they before this expansion, they spent time and effort. You can travel to any server, to any world to play with a friend. So servers only really matter for joining their free company, their guild, as it were.
It was saying something about like the traveling from one world to another and how you're limited on like certain things that you can't access necessarily unless you go
probably
back to
just
your
in that
server,
free
like,
version. Probably just in the starter version. Again, they limit that because they don't want to get weird.
Oh, of course, yeah. But when I first started up, I really was only able to get into one server. I ended up in Seraphim, and I made a Marauder. Marauder. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah, if you check back in like 1 or 2 hours, it would have recommended other servers to you. It just
I'm probably going to end up trying to make a. Mac is telling me which server you're in, so I might end up trying to make a character in there. Because honestly, I like this game. The combat for me is probably where this game did shine for me. Like that's when I first got into like my first instanced fight. And I was fighting things, and I was like, "Oh shit! I can move around. I can dodge things.
You have to, in fact,
right? Like it's a lot of MMOs. Doesn't matter where you're standing. If your enemy is like swinging at you within a certain like range, you're gonna get hit, and you just have to take the hits. Right. But this is like I feel like I'm in a place. I'm in a physical place, and I can move my character around. I have to move my character around.
And lots
try
of
to
dodging of AOE's and stuff, and they put markers on the ground and such.
Right. The markers on the ground, like it'll be like a column or 3 columns, and then the spell is coming, and so it all comes down to having to be paying attention insteed of like I remember watching friends of mine play Warcraft back in high school, and it was more just about the order of operations. Like my spell casting goes like this, then this, then this, then this, which does also exist in this game. There'll be like classes that like have to do their abilities in a special order because they stack if they do so. But like I said, more than that, you're doing that, and you're also going like, "Oh fuck, I'm about to get hit by his big shockwave attack where he jumps in the air and does a big ground pound." So you have to like physically scoot your guy backwards, and certain classes are better at that, which is really cool, and really fun aspect.
The cardinal sin this game still has is the first expansion. Even though Realm Reborn is good, it's a huge barrier to entry to new players. So you guys coming in, I don't envy you at all even trying to do that. They have redone a lot of it. They have streamlined a lot of it for those players to help you get to the next set of content a little faster with a little less filler. But it's still a big task. I mean, it's basically like playing five Final Fantasy games, and Realm Reborn probably even more like 2.5 in itself.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of games.
Huge undertaking, but
the funny thing is,
it is daunting.
If you were to pay, you can pay money and skip story in that game, like any MMO now. You can say, "Oh, I want to skip all the way up to the most current content." The funny thing is, this new content is so different that other than knowing who these guys are, the Scions, you could literally skip to the newest expansion, and knowing nothing does not matter to you because it's all this new place and all new stuff.
I skipped most of the dialogue, honestly, when I was playing, because I was like, this is so much. They did a big script for this game. It's a lot of dialogue.
As hell. I will say, like, I thought the writing was better than most. WoW or whatever. Like when I play WoW, I'm just like, I don't give a fuck about what's
Right.
going on in this game. But this one was like, okay, like it's well written. It's just a lot, you know.
It's just a lot.
a lot
Yeah,
of
yeah,
text,
yeah.
man. Yeah. Yeah, dude, honestly, I think I'm going to keep playing this game, but I don't know yet if I want to buy into it as far
Well,
as
it's
like
free for
actually,
the
like-
most part. Let's get
Right,
you with
exactly,
a
and
character
I'm gonna-
on our server, and I can take you on dungeons and levels and all kinds
Figure
of
out
fun
what you
stuff.
can and can't do.
Yeah,
with
I'm
the
gonna
free
fuck
thing, and
around
then
with
just
it,
fuck
you
with it.
know. Yeah.
But join us
That's cool.
on Diablos.
Diablos,
There you go.
yes, yeah. I'll try to see if it's open at some point and hop in there.
I
Well,
think there's a way I can send a invite to your email account, and you can join.
Okay.
I'm not on a very populated server. There's hardly ever a wait.
Oh, okay.
That-
Nice.
it does it for our time on Dawntrail. We have one last segment to get to after this quick break. All right, guys, we're back, and we're here with our final segment. I received a very threatening letter at my door from the king of video games because he heard we were doing RPG gems, and he's a king, and so he insisted that I play this file off of the flash drive that was inside of the very threatening envelope. So,
God.
without any further ado,
My lords, my ladies, I now present to you the king of video games.
Hello, Game Treasure Crew. It is I, the king of video games. Have you ever wanted to not be yourself? I need more game gems. This time of the role-playing game variety, the kingdom of the video game kingdom. Ooh, the people of the video game kingdom want to be someone else. They want to be a warrior or a space pirate or maybe even just the humble farmer. Please, Game Treasure Crew, bring me RPG gems.
Damn.
Will do,
go.
King.
King got heavy on that one.
he's got some sort of crisis that he's going through. He said, "Have you ever wanted to be someone else?" And then
Oh,
just
my.
didn't say anything. Okay,
At least he didn't fart.
It
this
makes me
time.
wonder, like, does the king want to be the king?
right? What does he really want to do for a living? Well, hey, listen. You don't have to be so scary with it, King, and get so dark and leave me these scary letters and then just stare off into the middle distance while you try to think of what you're going to say and then stumble over your words all scary like that. But hey, listen, RPG gems, you've come to the right place, King. I have a game that I almost mentioned on our PS1 carousel episode. And so I thought this would be perfect. It was right on the cusp of getting in. And I probably won't get a chance to talk about this PS1 game again outside of talking about it as an RPG, which is The Legend of Dragoon.
Oh, nice.
The Legend of Dragoon is a PS1 first-party title. This game is published by Sony, and I didn't realize this until I was looking at it earlier today. It's developed by Japan Studios, which is the same studio that does all of the Ico team games.
Mm-hmm.
Astrobot, Bloodborne, like games that are this I was like, oh shit! I looked at the logo, I was like, oh, Japan Studios. That's right, I had totally forgot. So this game was Sony's in-house, like we have Final Fantasy VII at home, and then cut to and it's Legend of Dragoon. It's the same thing. It's 3D models with pre-rendered backgrounds. The game has a pretty generic storyline. You're this guy named Dart, and you're a dragoon, and you're a warrior, and you got to save the world. But the game hangs on its graphics, much like, I guess Final Fantasy VII storyline is fantastic. But if you see our Final Fantasy VII episode, you'll see that we talk a lot about how the cutting edge graphics of that RPG was like, holy shit. So Legend of Dragoon was the same way. It had really cool polygonal characters. It had a camera that swiveled around the battlefield as you fought. When you do one of your moves, the camera would crash zoom into your character, and then it would do like a really, really cool like pre-rendered animation. And one of the coolest things about this game that I thought is it harkens to a game that we talked about last week as well, Xenogears.
Yeah.
This game had this cool, like, when you would do an attack, it would like it's funny. Japan Studios also made Parappa the Rappa, the rhythm game that we talked about last week. This game had a rhythm sort of aspect, almost like Paper Mario. When you would attack, a graphic would like crash into a a more opaque version of itself, and then you had to hit it at the moment that it made like contact with the outline in the correct position, and it would like continue your combo and make your attack bigger. So it was like basically a way to extend your guy's basic move to be more damaging. And then you had this mechanic where you could turn into like your dragoon form, and much like Xenogears, there was a huge reward in just like unlocking everyone's dragon form. I loved this game when I was, I want to say in middle school, I played this
I
game.
remember you playing it a lot, and I didn't play it a whole
Sounds
lot.
about
I really
right,
do
yeah.
need to go back and play this one.
Yeah, like I said, the storyline is not very good, especially in comparison to what we're used to now from games. But even back then, I think I remember being like, "This is pretty generic." Like, and but like I said, this game does not hang its hat on its storyline. This game hangs its hat on its really cool look and just overall vibe. Everyone looks like a 80s butt rock like metal
Hell yeah.
guy. You know what I mean? Like they have like flowing blonde hair and then like
yeah.
wings and shit. It's very Van Halen.
Seems like fucking
They're all in a
like
rock
Eddie-
band called
everybody's
Broadsword.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
But
Hell
yeah, you can pick this game up for relatively cheap. Like, it's still like a $25-$30 game because it's not that great. But if you have a PlayStation 1 and you like RPGs, King, and you haven't played Legend of Dragoon, the in-house answer to Final Fantasy VII from Sony, you should give it a try. It looks pretty good, it sounds pretty good, and it's pretty fun to play. Buck.
All right, I will raise you a Sony in-house studio game to a kind of Microsoft in-studio game. Actually developed my Mistwalker for them, and I've talked about it before.
Okay, yep.
Lost Odyssey.
Oh, nice.
King, holy smokes. I mean, first of all,
Great
so
game,
this is
yeah.
an Xbox 360 game, right? So it's pretty. It's got a lot, right? You know many Xbox 360 games that are 4 discs?
Oh, God, wow, yeah, that's right.
What?
These are
they
dual layer
Blu-rays?
DVDs.
Oh, they're okay.
That's 9 gigs each. 8.5
Jeez.
gigs. 4 discs. Because it was gorgeous and there was so much content. It was a lot of game. Mistwalker, formed by Hironobu Sakaguchi. Did we talk about him? I forget. Is he important to Final Fantasy? Oh, right.
Yeah.
He is the granddaddy of Final Fantasy, but he hasn't always worked with Square Enix. And Nobu Uematsu does the music in this game.
Right.
So it already had me at that when I heard about Mistwalker doing this, because they actually made 2 games around this same generation, this and Blue Dragon, which I adored both of them.
I couldn't remember that one. Yeah.
But they had Toriyama help with the art on that
Right.
one. This one has a special place to me because they pretty much like stole like 40% of the game's content from Final Fantasy IV. The main character, Kaim, is like a warrior / king of this area, a la Cecil of Baron at the end of 4. He's a knight. His wife, Sarah, the queen, it can be in your party, and she's a white mage. Does this ring any bells yet? No. Well, how about the gunslinger you can get later on? His name is Sid, by the way, that you can have in your party.
Yeah.
Or there's the magical twins, Cook and Mac.
It's like
It's got Caleb and Porum in it.
in an inadvertent Final Fantasy, like it's almost like it's part of the canon, and it just, you know what I mean?
They
It's
did
like
it
a-
on
like a-
purpose.
Yeah,
They
it's
did
so
it on
funny.
purpose.
It's like a stepbrother of Final Fantasy. You know what I mean? It's so close that it almost is one.
Where it gets
So
me
funny.
is it puts some of those RPG turn-based tropes that I absolutely love. You have a front line and a back line of characters. You have 5 character parties, which
Yeah.
God, I missed so much from Final Fantasy IV, because you get so much versatility in your party.
Right.
So some of the characters, like Kaim and his wife Sarah, and 1 or 2 of the other characters are immortals in this game. They're literally like, he's like 1,000 years old, but he lost his memory, something happened, whatever, so they start finding one another. But a bunch of the other characters you get in your party are mortals, regular people. So the difference is the mortals, a la old school style RPGs, they gain new abilities as they level up. whereas the immortals learn the abilities from the mortals by having them in their party. So it's kind of a mixture of like 4 and 9, where everyone has inherent abilities, and a little bit of like the Esper system from 6, where you're learning abilities from the, or the materia system where you're learning abilities from things, kind of merged into one, into the group. Had a ton of content, was a blast to play. Has this kind of weird but kind of cool system. It's got an aim ring system, where you can select as the accessories different rings. So if you know an enemy's weak to fire or something else, you can actually equip 2 different rings. You can combine them, and that becomes also a big part of the game to find the weakness of the enemies, because there end up being like 80 or 100 different rings to get. And what it does is it affects like this battle ring that pops up on screen, and you have to push and release the button in time, like you were just saying with Dragoon, to get like good, great, or perfect on the circle to do extra damage to the enemy. It does a really good job with cinematic, like guy doesn't just move forward with the sword, guy dashes forward, camera switches to a low upwards camera angle of your character dashing in, and then switches to a forward camera when you do the circles to make it really cinematic in the battles. Its biggest downfall was it was a little too hefty, so the load times are pretty rough in this game. I mean, 30-second to 2-minute load times depending on the size of the area you're entering. It was pretty. It didn't really take enough advantage of the hard drive that the 360 started to have, and it really could have, because that probably would have improved it. But there's ways to play in a more modern stuff with less of that on digital and whatnot too. But if you want to get an original copy, we do get these in for retro as well too. Love this game, awesome game.
That's another interesting, excellent, like you said. And we have Final Fantasy at home. Cut to Legend of Dragoon and Lost Odyssey. Raph, do you have an RPG gem for us this week, sir?
I do, and I actually went in a different direction with my RPG. I went with something that's a little bit more Western. So this, and also a game that's a little bit newer. This actually came out on May 24th, 2024, and it's a game called Dread Delusion. It actually just left early access in May. It's developed by Lovely Hell Place, who only developed this game, and it was published by Dread XP, which actually published Mortuary's Assistant and a couple of other games, some pretty popular horror games, weirdly enough. But the best way that I can probably like describe this game is actually by reading one of the reviews I read online, or reading a portion of one of the reviews I read online by one Nyarlathotep is the name of the reviewer.
Okay.
So imagine the Elder Scrolls Morrowind lore mixed in with some dystopian fantasy and a pinch of Warhammer aesthetics. Frankly, that still wouldn't be enough to describe this game's pull, story, and world. Dread Delusion is an adventure RPG in which you play an Inquisition agent seeking to unravel a plot to unmake an already broken world. You will encounter many stories, factions, and places to explore around the surreal Oneric Islands. It's the most dreamlike, psychedelic Morrowind clone. And dude, it's set on a floating continent that's broken up, and it's constantly changing.
Cool.
Whoa.
That sounds really cool.
Yeah, these islands are there's no map. You have to actually map the islands yourself because they're constantly flowing and ebbing. It's a really cool game, man. I spent a few hours messing around with this. I got it when it came out of early access, or just before it came out of early access, so I can get it on the cheap. But yeah, if you're a fan of like classic, Morrowind, Oblivion, like those old Elder Scrolls games, you'll probably have fun with this. It's fun to just walk around and explore. Combat slow. Oh, sorry, Jinx is going crazy over here. My dog's going nuts. Yeah, it's just it's cool to explore. The combat's a little slow, kind of like Morrowind, but that's not the draw here. It's getting sucked into like this immersive world, and the aesthetics. It's got that like.
It looks amazing.
Yeah, that old Xbox,
incredible.
like early Xbox, PlayStation, 3, PlayStation 2, really, like that kind of graphics. Like it's a gorgeous looking
Dark
game.
Souls came. Well, I mean, we talked about Kingsfield in a couple episodes ago. It definitely looks like that, but it also
definitely the same vibes. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, mixed with that Neon Demon game or whatever that shooter game. Like it's just like psychedelic.
For me, it's 100% Morrowind. It's like it's
sure, definitely.
Somebody called it Vaporwave Morrowind or Vaporwave Vardenfell.
Wow. Yeah. This looks awesome.
Yeah.
Nice.
Dread Delusion. Excellent. Well, go pick yourself up Dread Delusion, King of Video Games, if you want a action RPG that looks like a cocaine-fueled fucking castle
Fever dream.
romp. Yeah. But that does it for our RPG Gem segment. So we're gonna take a quick break, go to our what else we got, and then go ahead and wrap it up for today's episode. Okay, guys, what else you got? I'll go first.
Nice.
We did our Elden Ring episode 3 weeks ago now, after Shadow of the Erdtree came out. And at that point of the episode, I was talking about how I was stuck on Margot the Omen King. Well, I went back and I'm not fucking stuck on Margot the Omen King now anymore.
Yeah.
That's my what
Kill
else you
them
got.
motherfuckers.
Nice.
I spent the last week.
You beat one boss.
Just no, well,
right.
what happened was that I realized upon further inspection that the reason that I couldn't beat Margot the Omen King is that there was so much shit I had left to do in the main map that I just this game I've been now since our episode I probably played it for another 15 to 20 hours.
Nice.
And it's Elden Ring is the thickest game on the planet. It is so densely packed. It is as densely packed as fucking what's the Billy Blasso game? Animal Well. It's 10 animal wells and then another stack of 10 animal wells underneath that. Like it's so
Animal Inception.
Like they were just what ended up happening is that I was just like, oh, there's an area that looks like kind of bare. Did I do everything there? And then I went there and it's just like, nope. There was just like tons of guys to kill and bosses to kill and weapons to get. And then I did that with basically like 4 more areas where I was just like, oh yeah, that's right. Last time I was here, there was this big dragon and I had to run away. And then I was like, killed him. Oh shit. Now, so cut to, and then now I defeated Margot and I've unlocked the northern portion of the map and I'm exploring there, and now I'm getting my ass kicked by something that looks like a mixture between a baby doll and a crow. So
Oh, a baby crow.
I'm gonna keep on playing because fucking Elden Ring is fucking awesome. I want to get to the DLC, especially getting past that boss has reinvigorated my love of this game, and it's so fucking incredible. So
That's awesome.
That is my what else you got for this week. Just more Elden Ring. Buck,
Cool.
Anything interesting this week?
Yeah, my what else you got this week is something fun and interesting. It's a tabletop game that I picked up.
Oh.
A book that I picked up called, you'll love this, Raph, Don't Look Back.
Oh, nice. I haven't heard of this one.
Don't Look Back is a tabletop miniatures game of retro horror.
Cool.
It is basic. To give you good examples for you YouTube kids to see on here, it is different scenarios, and it's D&D the horror movie. That's the best way to explain it. It's a tabletop RPG style game, less RPG and more tabletop. It's not meant to be long spread out scenarios. It's not. It's meant to be like 2 or 3 hour one shots.
Theater of the mind stuff, especially, I'm sure.
I would say that. Yeah. Except these guys have a ridiculously stupid plethora of MDF buildings and things you can order from their website that are the best looking. They found some way to paint MDF wood, and they have some of the coolest looking buildings. I'm talking cabins in the woods. I'm talking drive-through fast food restaurants and movie theaters.
What?
These guys have insanely cool detailed buildings you can buy from them to bring into your scenarios to use and make it so much more. It's a tabletop miniatures game, so you move in inches, and what basically happens is the basic game is 4 human players, and the bad guy, the murderer, which is everything from a Jason ripoff to a ghost type to a monster from the woods, all these different scenarios, which they have minis for all of them too, if you want. And that is controlled by the game. there is a set and sequence of rules where the killer, the murderer, the bad guy is controlled by the game, not by a player. So basically the players are playing the game, and the scenario can be everything from find the keys to the car, and there's the car in the corner of the map, get to the car by the end of 15 turns and escape, or you lose, the killer kills you. Everything run the whole gamut of different scenarios and ideas and different things. And you can mix and match murders and killers. The different types of moves that the killers have can be randomized, so the killer's not the same every time. There's also additional rules for someone to play as the killer, if a fifth player wants to play as a killer. There's additional rules for a sixth player. Rather than the game's items and things like lights turning off and on, all of your characters have like a terror statistic that affects how scared they get. Do you stumble when you walk through those woods, or are you brave and you do a certain thing really well instead of, or do you trip going up the stairs into that cabin? A lot of that's randomized by the game. There's an additional set of rules where the sixth player is almost like a GM, like a game master, and they can direct the way that those things go, making it a little less random.
What sort of decision-making system does this use? Like, is it like a D20 system or like a D10?
It's mostly a D10 for a lot of the things that are in there. There's D20 for a handful of things.
It's a Call of Cthulhu kind of retro, or like a clone almost.
It's very much so a retro kind of thing. It just specifically goes for emulating horror movies.
Cool.
That's exactly what they were going for. That image that I showed you there had like a monster and then like a Michael Myers ripoff in the foreground with the thing inside the houses. Because all those minis they make, the houses, the roofs come off and the cabin will have like 7 rooms.
Nice. That's super cool.
It's insane, right? And so the main mechanic is your characters all have movement stats, attack stats, the ability to do things, special abilities, and then there's the terror thing where you get more or less scared. You have to manage that a lot, because if you lose all your health, you die. If you get double your fright, for doubly frightened on that terror stat, whatever, I forget the name of it, but you can die from that too. You die from fright, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And so you move along the map. These little bad guy tokens move around the map and do different things based on what you roll, and they can mean the killer pops up and attacks somebody, or they can make the killer pops up, attacks somebody, and then disappears into the shadows again. And does other stuff. Players will die during the scenarios, and then but the players get a turn of reprieve as they revel in their kill for the next turn. So
that's cool. What's it called again?
Man.
The name?
It's Don't Look Back is the
This
name.
is right up my alley, dude.
Yeah,
it's very fun. The book's not too expensive. We played. I didn't have the mat or any of the buildings like you just said, Raph. So we played on like a D&D square map.
Who makes it real quick?
This is a company called Black Site Studios.
Okay,
Interesting.
Who had a successful Kickstarter a couple of years ago, and now they kind of fund everything themselves, or they do like an internal one, because they have a bunch of other games that they do too. One that's like a feudal Japan monster hunting, one that's like a sci-fi kind of thing. They have one that's coming out that's a more like a Mad Max Fallout kind of thing too. But like if you're on YouTube right now, look at this terrain. Look at this 3-story schoolhouse terrain.
Jeez.
That you can buy. There's
tight.
the lights a little better there. That you can buy
Looking at
from
their
these
website,
guys.
they've got like cabins, like
They've all been out of stock since I've gotten these. So I haven't been able to buy
Crystal
anything.
Lake style, like single person
cool,
cabins,
and play mats and
that's fucking
trees, and I mean so many cool
This is
buildings
really cool.
that they have. Yeah, this is super. I could get this is really
Nice.
scary. I could get really addicted to it really fast. But we
Honestly.
played a game a couple weeks ago and we had a lot of fun with it. We had like a chain, not like a, I don't know, like a Bubba or like a Trapper from DVD kind of knockoff character was the bad guy. But it was a lot of fun. We played with AI like as the game controlling the bad guy. So I died, but the other guys got away. They hailed down a car. They got to the edge of the campsite and flagged down a car and got away. That was how we won. So
we should do a tabletop RPG episode. Shit.
yeah, I think we just might VHS expansions.
They basically release all their expansions in like little like VHS things that have like 2 killers with stats or a handful of survivors.
All right,
They stream on Twitch a lot.
That is really cool. Black Site Studios. Don't Look Back. An excellent thing to bring to the table this week that I am going to have to get my hands on. This is tight. Raph, what else have you got for us this week, sir?
Well, I actually did a lot. Like this last weekend, I did some dog sitting, so I got to hang out at someone else's house all weekend, and that means that I didn't get to do much, but just watch TV and play video games. And I picked up a little game called islets. We talked about Metroidvanias a couple of episodes back, and this is basically Hollow Knight, but fun and cheery and like
Hey,
cool
Hollow
and
Knight's
cute.
fun.
Yeah, it is fun. No, I like Hollow Knight a lot, but I'm saying
He meant
this game is-
cheery.
It's,
He meant-
it's
yeah.
cute and
yes,
colorful and
not very
bright. You know?
cheery.
This game is you play a little mouse and you're trying to reunite these floating islands that were all separated, and you basically bring a portion of the map together, and then you find another island, you join them together, and then the map kind of becomes connected to the other map that you had. This also combines like bullet hell elements. There's parts where you're flying around. Yeah, it feels. There's parts where you're flying around in a little ship, and then there's boss fights that are basically bullet hell boss fights where you're dodging projectiles.
Oh,
and
that's
having
fun.
to like,
Interesting.
yeah. Very cool little game. Cute music. It's kind of got like this lo-fi hip hop sort of vibe to it. Very relaxing. Sometimes it doesn't get so relaxing, like the bullet hell sections.
The bullet
are
hell,
kind
I
of
was gonna say,
frustrating
the
and-
bullet hell has
Yeah.
lo-fi relaxing music. That's just weird.
No, the music for those fights is actually great too. But yeah, I did that, and I picked it up, and I'm like almost done with it. Actually, took
How
me
do you
maybe
spell
about
the name?
islets, islets, islets.
Oh, like
tiny
little islands.
like
yeah,
little islands, yeah,
islets.
because they're all little islands floating through.
I
the
don't get
sky.
it. No, wait, I get it.
Cute.
And yeah, so
Fun.
this game is amazing, dude. I'm like 10 hours in. I'm almost done with it. It's short. It's not very long, but it's a very short but sweet experience. Fun game.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's on Steam, right? Just
Yeah, it's on
double-checking.
Steam.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
on the PlayStation Store or anything.
I also binge watched the entire first season of Three Body Problem, and that was cool. I don't know. It was weird. I don't know. Like, I don't want to say too much about it.
That was
Just like,
cool.
I started watching it at like 10 o'clock at night, and I was like, I'm not gonna watch like more than an episode or two.
And
of
then he
this.
didn't
I
sleep.
ended up like watching most of it until
Wow.
like 3 a.m. Woke up the next day, and then I finished it.
You
It's
wanted
good.
more.
Yeah,
That's a
Yeah,
good
I'm gonna
thing.
have to watch it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a Joneson thing.
Well, listen, on that is our show. We are done for this week. Thank you so much for listening. Do us a huge favor, like and subscribe. And if you're just listening to this, why don't you head on over to YouTube so you can see our beautiful faces as we discuss all this stuff, and you can see you can see that copy of Final Fantasy, that sleek ass black box copy of Final Fantasy. You can also reach us at our email, gametreasurepodcast@gmail.com, if you have money to give away, or gold to give away, or cash, or silver.
Goblins drop gold.
You can find links to all that stuff at our link tree at linktree/thegtp. Join us next week, where we will be doing an interesting game pairing revolving around 4-player co-op games that came out recently that are frustrating in nature. Chained Together, the Steam smash hit where you play as 4 men that have been chained together,
I love this.
paired with The Legend of Zelda 4 Swords, which was four swords. The Legend of
The
Zelda
Canadian swords,
4 Swords, which was recently put on the Nintendo Switch online console. You can play online,
Nice.
so you don't have to have 4 Game Boy Advances hooked up
With
to
link
a
cables
GameCube or
connected
whatever
to
it was
GameCubes.
before. So, and
I
yeah,
have
the
those
only
if we
thing
wanna
I
do that.
remember about that game is that you can pick each other up, and that was a cause of much turmoil.
Put me
So
down.
it'll be fantastic to compare and contrast these two frustrating 4-player fiascos.
Fun.
We want to thank Crunkwitch for the use of our theme song, Clash of the Droids. You can find them on Apple Music, Spotify, anywhere where they have tunes on the web. And of course, we would like to thank RetroGameTreasure.com. Owned and operated by the Megabuck himself, Retro Game Treasure is a subscription service that sends you bespoke boxes of retro video games every single month. That's right. Simply make your profile at www.retrogametreasure.com and you'll receive games tailored to fill out your collection. But how? It's simple, dummy. You make a profile on your website when you make your subscription, and you tell him what game systems you have and what kinds of games you like, and then he painstakingly peruses this massive warehouse that he has looking for games that are just right for you to make sure that your box of nostalgia is primo every month. RetroGameTreasure.com. Obsessed with video games since 1985. Buck, would you like to hit me with those new subscribers, please?
I got you. This week we welcome Chris Thorndike, Justin Paul, Nathan Chris, Matthew Raffle, Raphael Saavedra, Davis Ince, Brandon Silvio, Tyler Ferguson, Tristalile Fern, Chris Pearson, and Robert Nell.
Thank you, sir, and thank you guys for subscribing to RetroGameTreasure.com. My name is Max Stein, and I love the Game Treasure podcast. It's so bad.
It's so bad.
Rick